If you clicked on this video, it probably means you need help to create good-looking thumbnails for your YouTube content. If so, you've come to the right place. YouTube thumbnails are often sloppy or left out by those who start posting content on YouTube. However, this is a terrible mistake. The thumbnail is the first thing that someone who comes across your video will see. So it's very important to make an eye-catching thumbnail. If a thumbnail is not well done, nobody will want to click on your video. Of course, this will not ensure a successful video if the content is not interesting. So in this video I will give you some tips to instantly make better thumbnails. Once Photoshop is launched, I start by creating a document of 1280 by 720 pixels. Since this is the size that YouTube requires for thumbnails, you can save a preset by giving it a name and clicking on this little arrow. You can then easily access it in the saved section. Now the fun part begins. It may sound silly, but it has to represent the content of your video. Your thumbnail is the summary of your video in one image. Find the key elements that represent it the most and put them in your thumbnail. For example, if the title of a video is "I learned to ski in 24 hours, you can put in the background a snowy mountain within the foreground, the person doing this challenge, a stopwatch, and a person skiing. You must have a clear idea of what you want it to look like. We can think that the more elaborate the thumbnail, the better it is. This is totally wrong. If you don't know how to find a good balance, it can clutter your thumbnail and make it look very amateur. It's very common to see thumbnails on YouTube that are composed of only one image, and it looks very good. In this case, the viewer should understand the purpose of the video, both from the thumbnail and the title. Good examples are photography videos. The thumbnails are made of a single picture, and the purpose of the video is understood from the title. One of the most important things to keep in mind is that a thumbnail is displayed small on YouTube, so the elements on it must be large to be seen properly. Avoid putting unnecessary things and put the important elements in big size. To give you an example, let's have a look at these two thumbnails. The one on the left is very badly structured, everything is displayed small, and there are too many distracting elements. It is difficult to know what the video is about. On the other hand, the one on the right presents correctly the elements necessary to understand it. Everything is clear, big, and readable. Now I will show you concretely how to make good thumbnails. Let's go back to our document. I'm going to make the thumbnail of this video here while explaining the process. I'm going to use an old thumbnail that I made but never used. I had redrawn Anya from Spy Family. I want to use her for the thumbnail, but I don't like the background, so I will use the pen tool to mask her out. I press P and then click several times along the character to create points. When I get to the end, I click again on the first point to close the path. I then right-click, make a selection. I then click on the mask icon to create a mask based on my selection. To show you the background is now gone, I will quickly add a blue solid color adjustment layer behind her. This is only to show you, it doesn't really matter for the process. I find my mask lacks precision, so I'll refine it with the brush by pressing B and painting with black to mask and white to reveal. My goal is to hide all the white lines along my character. Once I'm happy with the result, I usually put a background, but not always, to keep the simplistic look of my thumbnails. For this one I'm going to use my old thumbnails as a background. I select them from my Finder and drag them into my Photoshop document. You can use any image you find on the internet, but avoid using copyrighted ones. I advise you to download your images from royalty-free sites like Pixabay, Unsplash, or Pexels. You can also directly use screenshots of your video. The images you import this way will appear as smart objects. I won't explain here in detail what smart objects are. What you can remember is that they are a type of layer on which you can apply effects in a non-destructive way, so you can change their settings at any time. After importing my images, I select them all by clicking on the bottom one, holding Shift and clicking on the top one. Then I left-click, hold and drag the layers below the one of my character. I then reposition them by selecting each layer individually, and then using the shortcut Ctrl or Command T, I do the same process for each layer until I am happy with the position of each. I reselect them all by clicking on the top layer, holding Shift and then clicking on the bottom layer, right-click Convert to Smart Objects. Now all the layers in the background form one smart object. I can now apply a blur effect by going to Filter, Blur Gallery, then Field Blur. I adjust the parameters of the effect with the slider on the right, and then I click on OK. My goal is to make my thumbnail as readable and clear as possible by detaching the character from the background. I find my background a little too dark, so I'll create an exposure adjustment layer on top of it, then move the slider a little to the right to make my layer brighter. The light is shining on my character from the right, so I'm going to reproduce the same lighting on my background. To do this, I create a blank layer by clicking on this icon. I then use the gradient tool to create a gradient of a blue color to a complete transparency. I then change the blend mode to color dodge, and adjust the opacity if the effect is too strong. I then search the internet for the Photoshop and YouTube logos in PNG format. I then drag them from my Finder into my Photoshop document. In the same way as before, I reposition them by selecting the right layer and using the shortcut Ctrl or Command T. Now we can make the final touches. I click on the layer on top, and then press Ctrl Alt Shift E or Command Option Shift E to create a visible stamp layer. I then go to Filter, then Convert for Smart Filter. Finally I go back to Filter, but this time I click on Camera Raw Filter. I can now play with all the parameters to give my image the look I want. The idea is not to overdo it if you don't want to destroy your image. When you're done, click OK. Now it's time to export our thumbnail. Click on File, Export, and then Export As. Set the file type to PNG, and set the scale to 100%. Click Export and you are done. I hope you found this video useful. If you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to not miss anything. It's up to you. On that note, see you next time.